We're talking now to Marilyn Linstead, formerly Medill, about her life near the Fad. So Marilyn, would you like to give us your name, please?
My name is Marilyn Linstead. I'm formerly Medill. My parents were Jesse Lindsay and Morgan Medill. And I'm 65 years old.
Terrific. Would you like to tell me where your family lives now?
Right now, I live on the 6th line at Lot 30, Concession 7, and this is where my grandparents bought in November of 1891. They purchased the farm for $3,000. They were married December 2nd, 1891, and the barn was built that year so they could house the cattle, horses, pigs, whatever else that they had in the barn.
When did your family settle in or near Ballinafat community as pioneers? About what time?
Well, my grandfather, he grew up in Erin Township, just south of the bell tower, which would be, I would say, maybe a mile south of Highway 24 on the west side of the road. And my grandmother grew up on what is now called Scottsdale Farm. Her brother, who the farm was left to by his parents, sold it to the Bennetts. And that was somewhere around 1850 for both of them, I would say.
Do you or any of your relatives still live in the area?
I still live actually on the farm. We did sell the farm 3 years ago, but we had a lot of our own for many years. We built in 1967. We built our home on a lot there that was given to me by my mother, and we still have that lot now. So I'm still really on the family farm, part of it.
What kind of work did your family do when they first settled? Like on the farm, or did they work off the farm, or?
They were farmers.
They were farmers? What kind of farmers? Were they grain farmers or mixed farming? Mixed farming?
Yeah.
Animals and grain?
Yeah. My grandfather, Lindsay, was big into the horses, which carried on to his son, Dave Lindsay, who had a lot of prize-winning race horses.
Do you know where your family originated from? In what community or what country?
Okay, the Lindsays came from Fermanagh Township in Ireland, and the Cooks were from Antrim and Leitrim. With the Cooks there was also Clarks, and they were also from that same area of Antrim and Leitrim in Ireland.
So, what do you consider yourself nationally now?
Canadian of Irish descent.
Terrific, thank you. Was this community predominantly Scottish originally? Was it Protestant?
It was mixed.
Mixed.
Yeah, there was Irish, Scottish, English.
Today, can you give any kind of judgment as to the demographic of the community? Has it changed?
Yeah, it's become more citified, I think. It's not what it used to be, because everything surrounded the church really, and things going on at the community center, and the farmers help farmers all the time. Now everybody seems to be for themselves, I feel. Of course, both husband and wife are usually working, so they don't have the time.
Do you find that you don't get to know them, so there isn't a connection?
A lot of times, yes, because both the husband and wife are working, and most times you are too, and the kids are in some sort of sport, so they're not around to get to know.
Did you know about Sandy McKay or the Fallbrook Farm or any of the McKays before today?
I did know of them, and I'm sure I have met him, but I can't remember, to tell you the truth.
You were married?
Yes.
Into which families did you marry?
I married my childhood sweetheart, Del Linstead. We've been married 46 years. He grew up in a community called Rockside, which is on the 5th line west of Caledon, just off of Baseline. And they had a farm there, which they moved to in 1944 from Richmond Hill.
How did you meet your husband?
It was actually through this church, because there was young peoples here, and it was a 3-point charge. There was Churchill, Balnafad, and Melville. And Del went to Melville United Church, and I, of course, went to Balnafad, and we would meet here at meetings, and I met him through there.
Okay. Can you tell me what children you have and their ages?
I have a boy and a girl. My boy's 36, and my daughter's 38.
Are they settled down in Balnafad or somewhere else?
No. Well, Lori is. She still lives with us. She has a slight learning disability with a hearing impairment as well, and she lives with us and works at Swiss Chalet in Georgetown as a dishwasher. And our son lives in Barrie with his family, and he works for Shell Canada, and he travels quite extensively across Canada.
Do you have any grandchildren?
2, a boy and a girl. Boy 5 and a girl 3.
Okay. Let's talk about what kind of community Balnafad is and was. How did you, through your lifetime, see it changed? What has changed?
Well, when I was growing up, I remember all the thrashings at the farm, and all the farmers got together and helped each other with the thrashing, and the women helped with the food, and the meals were fabulous. There had to be 10 kinds of desserts, I'm sure, made. But you know, everybody just helped each other out in that kind. And there was always something going on at the church here. There's always fowl suppers, or if a couple were getting married, they had usually a dance or something at the hall, and got together and bought them wedding gifts, and just so many things. The picnics, the school picnics, the church picnics, card games.
When you talk about the threshing, could you tell us a bit more about it? I'm from the city, so I don't know much about threshing.
Well, there was one farmer in the community that had a machine, and he would pull it to the individual farms, and it would thresh the grain and put it into the granary, and there was a chute that would put the straw up in the mow, and I felt sorry for those guys because they were sure dirty when they come out of there.
How would they get dirty?
Oh, the dust from all the grain, because it's so dry.
They'd be up in the mow tramping it down. The straw would be coming in on top of them.
That's right, and the grain, of course, somebody would be in the granary trying to make sure that it wasn't getting too full in one pot, because they would have different sections in the granary. At least ours did anyway.
What's a granary?
To hold the grain.
Could you describe it to us?
Well, everybody's place is probably a little different, but ours was... trying to think how big it would be. It was just sectioned off in 6 different sections. And you could have oats, barley, wheat in different sections, so that they could feed it to the cattle or horses, have it ground up for pig feed.
So would this be in a barn?
Oh yes.
Inside a barn?
Yeah, but some of them, in later years, they had steel granaries, which were outside. But we didn't. Ours was just in the barn.
How did you keep the grain dry?
Well, it's at the upstairs of the barn, where there's a roof on. So, and of course, there's wooden sides.
I have to say they took the grain to Kirkwood's feed mill to have it ground for their cattle and pigs. It's a commercial.
Actually, ours went into Dave Lindsay's flour mill in
Oh, dear.
Acton.
Oh, and I'm in the middle here.
Dave Lindsay was my uncle, my mother's brother, and he had the Acton flour mill for probably over 50 years.
Yeah.
And my father also used to work there too, so.
Is it safe to go in? Where are we? How has it changed now? No, so we did that, didn't
Yeah.
we?
Mhm.
Do you think it's harder now for people to feel part of the community?
No, they have to just get involved. That's the main thing, but I think there's more people that travel more than they used to. They'd be going to cottages or going on some exotic trip. Where back in the olden days, people didn't travel that far. And so they got to know each other and there was more comradeship, I guess.
When you say they didn't travel that far, do you have any suggestion about why they didn't travel?
Didn't have the money for one thing.
Okay.
And there was the places to travel, but not what you hear today. Because I remember myself, Dad's family are in Mount Albert, and we'd only go there maybe 3 times a year or 4 times a year to see his sister, because it was like an hour and a half drive with the car at that point. And that was a big thing to do at that time.
Do you think that the time factor or the availability of things to do in the community is the biggest influence?
Do you mean then or now?
Now.
A lot of it is time. A lot of people just don't want to get involved.
Do you have any suggestion about why they don't want to get involved?
Not really. I guess it's individual preference themselves.
Overall, what did you like best about this community when you were growing up here?
The things going on in the church, or the things going on in school, or the community center.
Will you share with us some of the things you did as a kid in the community?
I was in CGIT, Young People's. I guess I was probably in mission band too. I vaguely remember it. But and then Sunday school every Sunday, and church. Well, at that time, yeah, I guess I would be upstairs in church, because I think at that time they had a separate Sunday school first and then church afterwards. And I was in the choir for a bit.
So you had a pretty active social life then?
Just on weekends.
Oh, were these things did all these things take place on weekends?
A lot of them, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything through the week?
Not that I can remember other than 4-H. I was in that as a teenager. But that wasn't here in this community. That was over closer to Acton, Bannockburn, because they didn't have 4-H here at that time.
What did you like the least when you were growing up?
Housework. I'd rather be out in the barn helping my dad.
What would you say was the hardest part about living in this area when you were growing up?
Nothing that I can think of, no.
Just the housework.
Just the housework. What about the snow in the winter?
Actually, you didn't know any different. We had hard winters then, and the snow would pile up, but we didn't have the snow clearing equipment, so you dealt with it. That's all you did.
Now think carefully. Do you have any funny stories about life in the community? that you're prepared to share with us?
Not really. The only thing I had thought of, and I don't know how many people even know about it, but in 1942 there was a plane crash just up the road. And Mom and Dad were in the granary. Apparently it was foggy that day. And they heard the plane very low, and then they heard it crash. So they went running up the road, which would have been, I would say, a quarter of a mile, yelling to see if the person would answer back. And I guess he finally did, and they found where the plane was, which was really halfway between the 6th line and the 5th line where it crashed. And they got there, and it turned out to be, I don't know his first name, I know his last name was Gregory, and his parents owned the Roxy Theatre in Acton, and he had crashed. So Mom stayed with him and helped him at the site, and Dad ran home and phoned for the doctor and ambulance. And of course at that time it took a long time for it to come, and when they did come they rushed him to, I believe he went to Guelph Hospital, and from there to Hamilton, and he succumbed to his injuries from that. But I remember my grandfather taking me up to the crash site, showing me the plane, and at that time I would be probably 5 or 6, maybe 7, and the wreckage was still there, but you'd never find it now because the trees have just all grown up all around it. And I know vaguely where it is, but there's no way I could find it. And it's not our property anymore anyway, so I couldn't go in there. It used to be at one time.
Was it just a little plane?
I think it was a two-seater. I think. I don't really know. Of course, you see, that'd be 1942, so I don't really know what planes would be like then.
The reason I ask you is because not far from here was an area where the RAF from Britain brought their fighter pilots to train.
Okay.
I wondered if that was part of that.
I think he just had a private license, I think. I don't really know. I just know of the plane crash, and I had a piece of paper from the, I think it was the Free Press, but I don't know whether I have it with me or not, telling about it, and a picture of Mom and Dad at the time. Of course they spelled Dad's name wrong, but
that's quite amazing, isn't it? And you remember that?
yeah, I remember walking up there. In fact, I tried to locate it again in about 1960, I guess, walking up there, and I couldn't find it because it had just grown up.
Yeah. Do you, oh, let's try this one, because you've really told us 23, 24. In the early days, there were very, very big differences between the work that men did and the work that women did on the farm. How did you see the differences between work, the separation of the labor that had to go into making a living on the farm? Who did what?
In my family, I know Mom did cleaning and cooking, but then my grandparents lived with us too, so Grandma did a lot when she could, and Mom was out in the barn a lot helping Dad with stuff, being the milking, feeding the cattle, feeding the pigs, the horses, helping clean out. She'd be out probably helping haying too. We didn't have the modern equipment at that time either.
Did they milk by hand?
Oh yeah. Right up till they sold the cattle, they milked by hand, never by machine. And I hated that job.
Did you learn to milk?
Yeah, but I still hated it.
How many cattle did they keep for dairy?
I think they had somewhere around 12. They didn't have a lot. They sold the cream to the Acton Creamery, and the milk was, well, we had some for ourselves, and the rest was fed to the pigs.
Did you make butter?
I don't think they did. I don't remember them making butter. I remember them having geese, which I also hated because they used to chase me. And they would, around Christmas time, they would kill a lot of the geese, And I remember my aunts and mom and grandma all sitting around the kitchen plucking the feathers off of the geese, and then all the down they would keep to make their pillows. And
Okay. Today, do you know if any people still making a living from farming?
it's
Around
very
here?
hard to. Very hard to. You have to have a lot of money to do it.
Yeah. What do you think is the most important thing to have? Like if you've got the money, what would you spend the money on to keep that farm going?
You'd have to buy all kinds of machinery, and the machinery is so expensive. Either that or lease it. And the price of machinery these days is just out of this world, what you'd have to pay for one. And even to buy a farm now, and you can't just do it on 100 acres. You have to have like 500-600 acres or maybe more to do it. So you have to have an awful lot of property to make a living on it, and good machinery too. And it's costly to repair them. Right now we've had to take our tractor in to get fixed, and I imagine it's going to be quite a nice hefty bill for it. And it's like 30 years old, this tractor. But to go out for us to buy the same thing now, it's probably, I would think, somewhere around 150,000-200,000. So like, this is it, like people can't do it. They're so far in debt, most farmers, that they'll never see out. I know, just as an instance, we were talking to a fella down in Florida. We have a place that we go down there, and he's a farmer in Wisconsin, and he was milking, when he retired, 100 head of cattle. He had, I think it was 300 acres of land. His son has now taken over. He's got something like 200 cattle or maybe 300 cattle he's milking, and a lot more land, and he's gone out and he's leased all kinds of equipment. And he told his father, he says, I'll never ever be out of debt in my lifetime. And that's the story of a lot of farmers. And the Canadian farmer doesn't get subsidized like the American or the European farmers.
That's not a very positive outlook for somebody wanting to go into that.
No, there isn't. That's why a lot of them don't want to, because they can have a better life by just working off the farm and having a job that they might get a pension from. They can retire hopefully at 65 and enjoy themselves.
What will happen when there are no more farms?
And you got a problem.
Yeah. What do you think the reasons were for people leaving Balnafad?
Probably jobs. A lot of the jobs now are centered around the big cities, Toronto, Mississauga, many of the other bigger cities around the country too. So they don't want to travel because it's costly to travel. And the time.
Why have so many new people come into the community?
They're wanting to get away from the cities.
Yeah,
They don't care about the driving anymore, I guess, and they like the tranquil, I guess, country atmosphere, except that when they get here, then they want to change it to things the way the city is and have their way of things being done.
Okay, if we give you whatever money it would take, whatever time, how would you improve the community? What do you think should be done?
I really don't know. There's really nothing that I can see, but I'm sure other people would think that there's things that could be done. I mean, they've already got a sports field here. They've got a church, but a great many, well, I would say 90% of them don't come here at all. a lot, as I said though, a lot of them are working. And because now a lot of stores are open on Sundays, people have to work those days. So, and then maybe their family's far away, so maybe they want to go see their family, or their kids are in sports.
You have given a lot to the community over the years. How has the community given back to you and enriched your life?
I can't really say, to tell you the truth. I guess just through the church, friendship.
Is there any other story or anecdote or anything else you would like to add?
Any photo, any special photo you want to show?
I didn't bring any with me, actually. I don't know whether I've got anything on Mom in here or not. I'll have to take a look and see.
Thank you very much, Marla.
Okay.